So I feel like a chocolatey but slightly healthier snack than a candy bar, so I'm going to be making the European version of Muddy Buddies. And in the US, we make Muddy Buddies out of a very specific cereal called Chex, but it's a little hard to find Chex in Belgium, so I'm going to be making it out of corn flakes instead, unsugared corn flakes. And then I have some other things I'd like to throw in, like some pretzels. I'm going to throw in some raisins. I'm also going to throw in some salted peanuts. Now, you are not, you can throw in anything that you want to in terms of nuts or dried fruits or anything like that. Traditionally, Muddy Buddies don't have those things, but I feel like it, so I'm going to do it. I also have here some melted dark chocolate that I've just done up in the microwave. And I microwaved this for about 45 seconds, then I stirred it really, really well, microwaved it for another 30 seconds or so, stirred it really, really well. And that's the quick way to get your chocolate nice and melted without having to be all complicated and use things like double boilers. So what I'm going to do basically is just throw a whole lot of these things into a big bowl, stir, spread it out, and let it dry. So we're not going to make clusters. I'm actually going to spread it out into individual pieces here on my cutting board and then let it dry out. Okie dokie, so I've got my bowl, I've got my chocolate. Now it's time to start adding ingredients to the bowl that I'm going to coat in chocolate. I'm going to start with some pretzels. I am also going to add some raisins. Get some dried fruit in there. Chocolate-covered raisins, by the way, are one of the most awesomest things ever. We'll put some peanuts in. And there's no measurements on these things. Basically, you add what you want to add, and then you call it good. And finally, we have a whole lot of cornflakes. And also make sure that you've let your chocolate cool down a little bit, because we could mix with our hands today. I'm going to choose to mix very gently with my spatula only because I don't really want to get chocolate all over my hands. We might not use all of this chocolate, but we want an even coating of chocolate on everything, so I'm going to start with most of my chocolate already in the bowl. And then we have to stir it really, really well. And actually, we might have to switch to our hands because this is just slipping and sliding all over the place. I also think I definitely need the rest of my chocolate because we ain't getting an even coat yet. Here we go. Look at all that. Because of what it's doing, because it keeps pushing the mixture up to the side of the bowl, I think I am going to go ahead and dive in with my hands. And the other thing I can do, if I want my hands to slide around a bit more and not get so chocolatey, I can just put a little bit of baking spray on both of my hands. It won't stop chocolate from getting on my hands, but it sure will stop it from clumping or from all of the stuff from sticking to my hands. So get way down deep in there. Make sure that all of the chocolate is off the bottom. So this is starting to look absolutely wonderful. I'm going to try and get gently. We're still working gently, remember, because the cornflakes are going to break if we crunch them up too much with our hands. You're going to gently try and get as much of the cornflakes off of your hands as you can. Then you're going to wash up, and we've got to lay all of this out to dry. So it's about time for us to lay out our Muddy Buddies to dry, and the most important thing is to get a single layer on our work surface. So we're going to begin with some baking paper just so that we don't get chocolate all over our nice counter. We're going to lay out 2 sheets of baking paper and just use a pair of scissors to cut that off with the right size. Once our baking paper is secured, we're going to grab our bowl of Muddy Buddies here and just dump it right out on the paper. Just make sure your paper stays straight. And because we're not making cookie clusters, it'll be really important to spread the Muddy Buddies out into a single thin layer. It's okay to have some clusters because they'll be delicious and crunchy and tasty, but that's not the overall goal because we're going to be rolling these or tossing them in powdered sugar, which means that they'll be a separate snackable item. We've very nearly gotten these into a single layer. You could keep going if you wanted to, but these look pretty darn good. So we're going to let these sit probably for at least 20 to 30 minutes, if not longer, because we want the chocolate on the outside layer to be completely solid before we do our final step. All right, so our Muddy Buddies have dried completely, which is excellent. What I'm going to do now is, before I actually gather them all up, I'm going to help them from sticking to each other anymore. And I'm going to take a sieve and sprinkle some powdered sugar into the sieve, and then sprinkle that all over this mixture. Now, there's not really an amount that I've ever used to do this. I used to do this with my grandma. And so I don't really have like a measurement to give you. But I'm basically just going to sprinkle like snow all over it. And it is going to be kind of important that I keep the heat of my hands away from this really thin coating of chocolate. So I'm only going to mix this as much as I absolutely have to and then get it into a bowl. Alright, so this looks like a lot of powdered sugar, but we'll keep that off to the side just in case we need it. Now all I'm going to do is very gently start tossing all of this together. Gently, gently, gently. Looking pretty good. Okay, so what we have here is a giant pile of Muddy Buddies. Tastes like a winner to me. Enjoy.